To build a fortress of stone is to admit vulnerability. True power doesn't leave an address for grave robbers or future empires to conquer. While Rome, Egypt, and Persia carved their vanity into giant blocks of granite, a nomadic world built its monuments out of absolute absence. Genghis Khan didn't want a shrine. He wanted to be weaponized into the earth itself. If you are watching this right now, I want to ask you something. How much of history do you think is actually true? Because what you are about to hear was never meant to reach you. These are the classified files, the buried evidence, and the forbidden stories that powerful forces spent decades trying to erase. If you are someone who refuses to accept the official story, you are in the right place. Subscribe to the Dark History Files and join thousands of truth seekers uncovering what history tried to hide. Welcome back. This is the Dark History Files, and today we expose a truth that was never meant to be told. Among the Mongols, mortality was understood within a realm of constant migration, immense horizons, and deep ecological alignment. Survival unfolded across fluid grasslands rather than inside fortified cities. Daily existence was governed by shifting skies and relentless seasons. In this environment, mortuary practices diverged sharply from empires that projected authority through monumental architecture. The geography itself dictated how remembrance, honor, and the treatment of the dead were executed. To decipher these traditions is to enter a world ruled by custom rather than masonry. Lineages preserved heritage through oral records, ritual, and collective memory. The experience of lost-bound communities together through spoken pacts and ancestral rites. Winds sweeping the steppe, distant predatory sounds, and the sheer emptiness of the tundra framed these departures. Identity endured through bloodlines and allegiances, not edifices visible from afar. Over generations, this approach toward mortality dictated the choices made after death. While foreign rulers erected massive tombs designed to compel attention, the Mongol world leveraged a different strategy. Privacy matched reverence. Concealment served a purpose beyond tactical security. The coordinates of a burial remained restricted to an elite vanguard. As years elapsed, that circle contracted further, allowing the wilderness to digest the site. These protocols demand a re-examination of legacy. Modern observers equate power with visibility, assuming a monument must anchor significance across eras. Yet a parallel perspective exists. Honor functions without public theater. Influence survives through strategy, values, and conquest rather than stone. Within this framework, an unmapped grave signifies preservation, reinforcing a conviction that true dignity requires something deeper than a marker on the horizon. To decipher Mongol mortuary customs, one must analyze the broader worldview governing the steppe. The Mongols existed in direct alignment with raw environmental forces. Weather dictated deployment, seasons engineered strategy. Immense distances mandated tactical flexibility. This ecological bond transcended daily survival, forging how the culture perceived existence. Life was processed as a brief tenancy within an ancient landscape, a terrain preceding individual arrival and outlasting human mortality. Within this framework, death bypassed permanent architecture, while rival empires anchored memory in monuments designed to dominate the topography. The Mongols utilized disparate mechanics of remembrance. Historiography indicates burial coordinates were fiercely guarded. The objective was never to construct a visible shrine for future reconnaissance. Instead, focus converged on precise ritual, structural respect for the deceased, and the execution of ancestral mandates. This protocol contrasts sharply with modern expectations. Contemporary states anchor leadership in museums, memorials, and heavily fortified tombs. Yet across history, societies managed memory through diverse strategies. For nomadic coalitions, remembrance relied on collective intelligence rather than masonry. Oral chronicles preserved an emperor's geopolitical footprint without requiring structural anchors. Influence endured through strategic memory rather than architecture. Nomadic mobility further dictated these realities. Populations migrated along seasonal vectors rather than anchoring in fixed settlements. Infrastructure was engineered for rapid assembly, transit, and redeployment. Movement defined survival. Consequently, permanence carried a vastly different definition than it did in urban civilizations built on masonry and monumental engineering. Mortuary values naturally mirrored this fluid societal structure. Spiritual parameters deeply reinforced these operations. While specific doctrines remain a subject of historical debate, reverence for the cosmos anchored Mongol tradition. Ridges, river systems, and topography carried immense symbolic capital. Distinct coordinates commanded absolute veneration. The boundary separating human existence from the wilderness was processed via protocols alien to urban civilizations. Burial methodologies emerged directly from this metaphysical matrix. Synthesized, these vectors explain how calculated anonymity coexisted with supreme honor. A burial site required no architectural footprint to project power. A grave integrated into a remote horizon still manifested ultimate reverence. The absence of a monument signaled no deficit of memory. Rather, it executed a sophisticated strategy to protect, preserve, and merge an imperial legacy with an eternal landscape. The concept of a hidden tomb becomes logical when analyzed as tactical protection rather than mere concealment. Throughout history, burial sites faced constant vulnerability. Regimes crumbled, political rivalries mutated, and valuable artifacts invited plunder. For architects guarding imperial dignity, orchestrated silence was a pragmatic defense. A coordinate restricted to an inner circle neutralized threat vectors in the decades that followed. Within the Mongol hierarchy, reverence required the weaponization of intelligence. Strategic coordinates were insulated from public access. Crucial information remained rationed among select aeons. This methodology governed leadership, sacred geometry, and mortuary execution. Knowledge functioned as a high-value asset. Restricting its circulation bypassed the need for theatrical mystique, enforcing necessary privacy and defense. This framework directly countered the traditions of rival empires. Across antiquity and the medieval theater, sovereigns engineered monumental architecture to project authority post-mortem. Colossal mausoleums, temples, and obelisks served as propaganda directed at future generations, broadcasting dominance through raw masonry visible from distant horizons. Visibility was the strategic objective. The Mongol protocol executed an inverse strategy. Instead of anchoring power to a visible coordinate, the burial mandated total withdrawal from human reconnaissance. The wilderness itself became the fortress. Ridges, forests, valleys, and boundless plains offered infinite vectors for a site to merge into the topography. Weather and ecological growth systematically erased anomalies. The landscape became an accomplice to the secret. This synthesis of burial and geography carried deep symbolic resonance. An architecture of stone fractures the landscape, demanding observation. A concealed grave, conversely, assimilates into the ecosystem. Vegetation reclaims the surface, seasons cycle across the earth. Rain, wind, and starlight execute their rhythms. The burial site integrates into the cosmos rather than contesting it, a final convergence for a culture bound to the steppe. As generations expired, The mechanics of secrecy intensified. The original custodians aged. Recollections fractured. Lore mutated across centuries. Ultimately, the hidden tomb transcended its defensive function to become something monumental. A protected grave mutated into an imperial enigma. The initial objective was survival of a legacy, but the final outcome was the deepest unanswered question in the historiography of the Mongol Empire. Mongol mortuary doctrine must be evaluated against their perception of power and achievement. While foreign sovereigns anchored legacy to structural reminders, palaces, temples, and obelisks serving as permanent insignia of authority, influence operates through disparate vectors. A commander's strategy, legal codes, and geopolitical shockwaves reshape civilization long after stone infrastructure crumbles into dust. Genghis Khan's footprint required no architectural validation. By his demise, his authority consolidated vast territories, governing millions. This legacy circulated through administrative institutions, trade networks, and collective trauma. Unlike a stationary monument, this influence mutated across borders and generations, weaponized by human agents rather than masonry. This dynamic explains how a hidden grave coexisted with global historical significance. Imperial memory decoupled from public visibility. The coordinates remained blank while the ruler's impact remained absolute. Orchestrated anonymity intensified the reverence surrounding the corpse. A site insulated from human reconnaissance acquired sacred neutrality. The vacuum of certainty compelled awe rather than casual familiarity. The empire remembered the conqueror without needing a shrine to anchor the myth. This strategy exposes the friction between presence and absence. Conventional historical sites invite scrutiny via tangible survival, walls, chambers, inscriptions, and plundered artifacts. The tomb of Genghis Khan operates through inversion, deriving power from what cannot be witnessed. Historians and archaeologists acknowledge the physical reality of the site, yet its coordinates defy verification. The void itself becomes the monument. This alignment of memory and uncertainty has endured for centuries, leaving each generation to inherit the same unresolved query. The question persists because the defensive protocols shielding the body achieved total efficacy. Ecosystems altered. Political regimes collapsed. Empires dissolved into oblivion. Yet the coordinates remain unmapped. Whether driven by tactical pragmatism or spiritual mandate, the strategy achieved absolute longevity. The hidden grave transcends its biological function, manifesting a specific philosophy of remembrance. Authority demands no architecture. Reverence requires no public theater. Within the parameters of the steppe, dignity was preserved through insulation, restraint, and calculated distance. The surviving enigma remains the purest reflection of those values, governing how humanity processes Genghis Khan centuries after his extraction from the earth. Stepping back from the mechanics of Mongol mortuary custom, a grander configuration materializes. These operations were forged by topography, migration, metaphysics, and collective experience, evolving within a society interacting with the cosmos on terms alien to agrarian civilizations. Consequently, mortality and remembrance forged an independent trajectory. Honor found expression in anonymity. Reverence manifested as systematic protection. Identity endured without relying on masonry visible to the casual traveler. This framework clarifies why the narrative of Genghis Khan's final transit remains distinct. Contemporary assumptions compel a search for the monumental and unmistakable. Modern observers anticipate towering obelisks, labyrinthine vaults, or epitaphs broadcasting the stature of the interred sovereign. Yet the parameters of the steppe dictate an inverse reality. The supreme burial required no architectural footprint. Under this doctrine, total concealment represented the ultimate manifestation of respect. The Mongolian landscape operates as the primary engine of this preservation. Across the steppe, massifs, dense taiga, river basins, and boundless horizons form an ecosystem engineered to assimilate human activity. A grave embedded within this expanse integrates into a broader ecological matrix rather than fracturing it. Over time, weather patterns systematically erase structural anomalies. Vegetation reclaims the soil. Trails dissolve. The wilderness absorbs the data points of human presence. Across centuries, these natural transformations synchronized with the degradation of human memory. Strategic intelligence contracted into fewer hands. Oral lineages guarded core truths while allowing peripheral details to expire. Lore mutated, coordinates shifted. The sole constant was the conviction that a burial had occurred and its location remained intentionally sealed. The exact vector receded with each passing lineage, transforming a cultural mandate into history's most resilient enigma. A deliberate stillness defines this outcome. While ancient monuments endure by demanding attention, the resting place of Genghis Khan utilized an inverse strategy, deriving authority from absence rather than visibility. Historians scan the topography, archaeologists debate the anomalies, travelers map the terrain. Yet the wilderness maintains its silence. The mystery endures not through what has been excavated, but through what remains rationed. Ultimately, this perpetual uncertainty executes the very traditions that engineered it. A concealed grave fortified by distance, memory, and time mirrors a philosophy prioritizing discretion over public theater. Long after empires fractured and generations dissolved, that tactical choice governs the narrative. Somewhere within the Mongolian interior, an imperial coordinate rests beneath the earth. Whether exposed or left unmapped, the protocols surrounding it have already claimed immortality. Anonymity is not a lack of memory, it is a clinical military defense. But to execute an erasure this flawless, you need more than a vow of silence. You need a landscape built like a maze, a geographic vault that swallows data and spits out only ghosts. Burkhan Khaldun rises from northeastern Mongolia, breaking the structural monotony of the open steppe. Dense forests fortify its slopes. Torrents cut through constricted valleys. Craggy ridges intersect blocks of thick alpine vegetation. From a distance, the massif assimilates into a vast grid of high terrain. Upon approach, however, the topography reveals intricate architecture. Concealed folds, timbered ravines, and isolated clearings form a geography engineered for strategic insulation. Navigating this terrain counters the exposure of the low plains. Pine and large canopies partition sunlight into fractured configurations across the moss. The acoustic signature of hidden water currents echoes through the timber. Avian calls puncture the upper canopy. Cold air pools beneath the branch architecture, saturated with the scent of damp loam and pine needle decomposition. Every valley junction presents distinct textures and muted tones, engaging the senses with a cold precision absent on the flat plains. Cyclical transitions systematically re-engineer the massif's layout. Spring initiates aggressive undergrowth along river arteries. Summer congests the ravines with dense cover. Autumn shifts the forest into amber tones. Winter buries ridges under heavy snowpack, erasing tracking lines and structural markers. These seasonal interventions alter visibility vectors and navigation routes. A coordinate easily identified during one transit becomes unrecognizable in the next cycle. For generations, Burkhan Khaldun functioned as a repository of metaphysical capital. Deep historical lore anchors the massif to cultural identity and ancestral veneration. A landscape commands authority not through its raw resources, but through collective conviction. Distinct topographies compel silence by their atmospheric weight alone. Long before modern investigative teams designated these slopes as the probable terminal coordinate of Genghis Khan, the mountain occupied a sacred lock within the Mongolian consciousness. Burkhan Khaldun commands attention in the historiography of Genghis Khan due to its systemic capacity to swallow secrets. From a distance, it blends into the regional massifs, yet proximity exposes a labyrinth of natural defenses. Valleys fracture into isolated ravines. Dense forests choke lines of sight. Waterways carve winding arteries through the rock, while jagged ridges isolate contiguous sectors. A traveler advances merely a few yards before the horizon mutates, giving the mountain an impenetrable depth. The timber zones engineer this isolation. Unlike the exposed steppe, where the horizon offers zero concealment, these wooded slopes ration visibility. The canopy fractures long views, reducing the terrain to deceptive glimpses. A clearing presents a brief diagnostic look across a gorge before the forest reclaims the trail. Shifting light filters through the foliage, altering tracking vectors throughout the day and forcing reliance on localized navigation rather than distant landmarks. Fauna adds a silent layer of security to the massif. Deer navigate the timber, while avian predators occupy distinct elevations from riverbanks to high branches. Hidden wildlife leaves faint traces along game trails and torrents, their migration patterns dictated by seasonal shifts. Their silent presence confirms the mountain is no dead monument to human history, but an active ecosystem operating on its own ancient frequencies. Hydrology further shapes the atmosphere of Burkhan Khaldun. Glacial streams descend from the peaks, slicing through timbered gorges. Some flow silently over stone. Others gain kinetic force during descent. The acoustic signature of moving water alerts the vanguard long before the current is sighted. During summer cycles, these channels sustain dense undergrowth, forming tactical pathways through a terrain that defies standard navigation. For architects prioritizing total concealment and protection, this geography provides supreme advantages. A secluded ravine remains masked behind concentric ridges. An isolated clearing escapes reconnaissance unless the observer possesses the exact coordinates. Even modern tactical teams find the mountain expands deceptively, revealing deep layers of terrain beyond every ridge. The topography penalizes speed, demanding meticulous observation. These precise attributes explain why Burkhan Khaldun anchors the imperial enigma. Whether it guards the terminal coordinate or not, the massif possesses the geometric attributes required to sustain a myth. Its forests, ravines, and sealed clearings create a sanctuary where a sovereign's remains could endure for millennia, fortified by the natural architecture of the land. Beyond its physical topography, Burkhan Khaldun exerts a formidable historical dominance. For centuries, this massif has anchored oral traditions and collective trauma reaching into the genesis of Mongolia. Crucial chronicles link its coordinates to Genghis Khan's early survival and eventual ascent. While these links offer no definitive archaeological proof of his interment, they explain why the mountain remains the epicenter of the imperial enigma. Its significance is measured in geopolitical memory, not mere geography. Historical tradition dictates that Genghis Khan held Burkhan Khaldun in sacred regard. The massif surfaces in records documenting his life before consolidating the nomadic factions of Eurasia. During eras of existential threat, these ravines provided critical tactical refuge. These survival narratives became fused into his mythos. Over generations, the mountain acquired a symbiotic alignment with his personal arc of conquest. This association dictated how subsequent lineages processed the landscape. A massif tied to the survival of an empire's architect naturally commanded absolute reverence. Geography gained strategic weight through systematic remembrance. Lore is weaponized, traditions are passed forward. The location transcends its physical attributes, mutating into a shared cultural asset. Burkhan Khaldun systematically locked its position within the Mongolian historical consciousness. Sacred geography governs nomadic societies. Distinct massifs, river systems, and natural perimeters merge with collective identity and metaphysics. These coordinates are valued for the symbolic capital attached to them, a category Burkhan Khaldun anchors. Its authority emerges from this synthesis of terrain and tradition, where the physical layout and historical memory permanently reinforce one another. This metaphysical dimension directly shapes theories regarding the hidden tomb. A coordinate already insulated by cultural taboo presents the logical choice for a conqueror's terminal extraction. The strategy possesses a compelling internal geometry. A mountain that provided tactical defense during life symbolizes eternal protection after death. Whether this logic aligns with historical reality remains unverified, yet it sustains the endurance of the theory. Today, investigative teams, historians, and tacticians approach Burkhan Khaldun from divergent vectors. Some deploy archaeology, others dissect codices and oral intelligence. Many seek the raw atmospheric weight of the terrain. Moving through these valleys, the massif's capacity to inspire obsession becomes clear. It operates as the ultimate intersection of history, memory, and geography, the precise coordinates where the enigma of Genghis Khan's burial remains fortified. As interest in Burkhan Khaldun intensified over centuries, the mountain transformed into a repository of layered history. Ancestral traditions, codices, regional lore, and contemporary investigation converged upon this single coordinate. Yet, despite mounting scrutiny, the massif maintained an impenetrable detachment. Remote sectors defied access. Dense timber choked the ridges and ravines. The topography enforced an absolute isolation from external reconnaissance, penalizing casual assumptions and demanding meticulous exploration. For vanguards breaching the perimeter, the mountain reveals its architecture with calculated delay. A lone ridge surfaces first, followed by obscured massifs looming astern. Gorges fracture elevations that appeared seamless from afar. What seemed uniform dissolves into a complex grid. This calculated unfolding dictates the terms of engagement. Diagnostic intelligence is rationed step by step. The topography penalizes speed, demanding total immersion rather than detached observation. These geometric attributes weaponize the landscape against reconnaissance. A target coordinate embedded within this matrix defies detection, even with generalized intelligence of the sector. Countless ravines, crests, and timbered zones offer infinite variables. The core strategic challenge transcends locating a specific site. It demands isolating one precise variable from a multitude of identical topography verified by historical metrics. This friction has fueled generations of tactical speculation. Conflicting hypotheses target isolated ravines, high elevations, or sealed clearings. Analysts interpret historical clues through disparate frameworks. Textual traditions point toward one sector. Archaeological data points toward another. The outcome is a landscape of variables rather than conclusions. Burkhan Khaldun ceases to be a singular answer, mutating into a theater of competing theories. Simultaneously, the the massif functions as a living engine rather than a static historical puzzle. Fauna migrates through the timber. Arterials maintain their descent through the valleys. Seasonal cycles systematically re-engineer visibility, color, and texture. Local factions maintain ancestral links to the sector that transcend academic investigation. These operational realities confirm the mountain's sovereignty. It possesses an identity independent of the imperial tomb. This equilibrium between data and data void renders Burkhan Khaldun formidable. The massif yields sufficient historical context to trigger investigation, yet deploys enough geometric complexity to repel simple derivation. Investigation confronts both presence and absolute erasure. Tradition broadcasts significance, while the terrain seals the coordinates. Ultimately, Burkhan Khaldun transcends its status as a suspect location, symbolizing the hunt itself, poised between empirical certainty and the eternal enigma. Upon concluding an investigation of Burkhan Khaldun, the mountain ceases to be a mere coordinate, expanding into an isolated world embedded within the wilderness. Its forests, ravines, torrents, and ridges form infinite spaces where history and ecology collide. Every topographic feature weaponizes the atmosphere. An unmapped valley enforces privacy. A timbered slope rations visibility. A winding stream dictates tactical movement. Synthesized, these elements construct a theater engineered to sustain a multi-generational enigma. The massif's dominance endures not because empirical answers have surfaced, but because uncertainty remains absolute. Crucial traditions bind it to Genghis Khan. Cultural memory mandates supreme reverence. Investigative teams continuously scan its geography and strategic significance, yet the core matrix remains unresolved. This fusion of geopolitical gravity and information vacuum positions Burkhan Khaldun at the nexus of the mystery. Neither a confirmed burial coordinate nor a discarded variable. The mountain's design naturally compels clinical calculation. An operative standing within the timber or surveying a gorge confronts a landscape that rewards microscopic analysis. Acoustic signals sharpen. Distances warp relative to the exposure of the low step. Strata of terrain reveal their geometry with calculated delay, penalizing speed and demanding observation while withholding immediate deduction. In every configuration, it mirrors the process of decoding the grand enigma itself. Generations of historians, tacticians, and indigenous clans have breached Burkhan Khaldun with divergent objectives. Some demanded empirical evidence, others sought ideological alignment with antiquity. Many arrived carrying queries that defied total resolution. The massif integrated them uniformly, offering only its forests, streams, wildlife, and concealed ravines. It rationed specific details while masking the rest, enforcing its mandate not through proclamations, but through systemic preservation of uncertainty. Across centuries, that information void became the definitive signature of the mountain. The phantom coordinate of an imperial tomb remained locked within the historiography of the Mongol Empire. Each generation inherited the same unresolved equation, adding layer upon layer of speculation. Yet the massif maintained its sovereign trajectory. Seasonal cycles rolled over its peaks. Snowpack accumulated and thawed. Timber matured. Rivers drained the valleys. The ecosystem operated independent of human hypotheses. Currently, Burkhan Khaldun remains the primary suspect in the search for Genghis Khan's terminal extraction point. Whether it guards the definitive answer remains unverified. What is absolute is its eternal leverage over the mystery. The massif stands at the exact convergence of history, dogma, and geography. Masked within its timber and ravines lies a void of pure possibility, or a monument of supreme gravity. The landscape maintains its silence, and that silence continues to pull the world into its orbit. The mountain does not just hide information, it actively mutates it. To search Burkhan Khaldun with standard vision is to look at a lock that changes its combination with every season. But the true trap wasn't engineered by nature, it was executed by the living. Following the burial, the landscape bore the immediate scars of high-level activity. Overturned loam, tactical pathways, staging grounds, and cavalry tracks fractured the terrain, an operational signature visible to any immediate reconnaissance. Yet, strategic chronicles indicate immediate measures were executed to neutralize these anomalies. The geography became an asset. Gorges, timberlines, and open plains offered critical opportunities to camouflage, overwrite, or assimilate these data points until the perimeter uniformized with the wilderness. Visualizing this erasure requires tracking the systematic dissolution of evidence. Cavities stamped by horseshoe iron lost their defined contours. Grass compressed under column transit slowly recovered its verticality. Rainfall eroded improvised trails, while wind currents deployed dust across exposed soil. The atmospheric signatures of campfires and human occupation evaporated. What was once a conspicuous footprint receded into standard topography, digested by continuous environmental forces. Chronicles detailing the interment frequently reference deliberate actions engineered to accelerate this planetary assimilation. While specific historical metrics defy confirmation, the survival of the tradition remains diagnostic. The doctrine prioritized total minimization over preservation. Physical markers were forbidden. Vectors were designed to disorient, not guide. Intelligence contracted. Through this fusion of operational command and natural erosion, the burial coordinates seamlessly dissolved into the vast monotony of the Mongolian plateau. This mechanism demands an inversion of conventional memory. Standard historical assets endure through continuous validation, monuments, and academic reconnaissance. Here, the inverse architecture operated. Recognition was systematically degraded. Data accessibility decayed over time. Within this strategy, historical amnesia was not a failure. It was the definitive objective. The final product was an ordinary landscape presenting zero anomalies to subsequent generations, while permanently sealing a secret beneath the bedrock. The traditions surrounding the eradication of the burial site converge on a singular axiom. A secret remains secure when its coordinate offers no data points. While the exact historical metrics of these records defy easy verification, the collective chronicles share an identical thesis. Measures were executed to ensure future reconnaissance encountered zero structural anomalies. The objective transcended masking a grave. It was to engineer in ordinary topography, forcing the coordinate to blend seamlessly into the regional wilderness. This containment strategy required layers of operational concealment, prioritizing immediate physical indicators. Overturned loam invites scrutiny. Improvised pathways betray column movement. Staging grounds leave signatures through charred earth, discarded assets, and fractured vegetation. Neutralizing or camouflaging these tactical footprints neutralized the risk of adversarial reconstruction. Routine protocols, executed with precision, yielded total systemic erasure over time. The terrain functioned as an active accomplice. Rainfall eroded depressions stamped into the loam. Vegetation advanced over exposed soil. Seasonal cycles altered colors and surface textures. Wildlife migration vectors intersected the terrain without regard for human actions, stamping out pre-existing tracking lines. a coordinate that appeared highly anomalous immediately after the ritual uniformized within months. The ecosystem rejects permanence, digesting human traces through continuous exposure to weather and time. Beyond material vectors, logistics presented a vulnerability. A burial site is frequently compromised not by its internal design, but because the transit route remains visible. Iterated movement creates predictable patterns. If security was the priority, intersecting recognizable vectors was as vital as camouflaging the terminal coordinate. Imperial traditions emphasize this logistical risk, reflecting an understanding that column movement leaves a signature even when the final objective is hidden. These accounts diverge from conventional ancient military doctrine by prioritizing prevention over physical defense. Elite burial sectors across history were fortified, marked, or garrisoned. The protocols dictating Genghis Khan's interment utilized an inverse strategy. Rather than defending a localized objective, they engineered an intelligence vacuum to prevent identification from the outset. A hidden asset requires no garrison if the coordinates do not exist in human records. As decades elapsed, the efficacy of this strategy compounded. Each seasonal cycle erased residual anomalies. Each successive lineage inherited only fractured intelligence. Eventually, the topography assumed absolute guardianship of the secret. Forests choked ancient pathways. Gorges swallowed forgotten vectors. Grasslands dissolved the tracks of column transit. What was once verified through direct observation mutated into a permanent data void, shielded not by masonry or monuments, but by absence and time. Among the most persistent traditions linked to the burial is the axiom that human cognition itself was weaponized for concealment. Material signatures dissolve via weather and time, but intelligence endures through human agents. As long as individuals retain coordinates and transmit that data, a secret remains vulnerable. Consequently, core protocols targeted not just the topography, but the systematic contraction of those who witnessed the execution. The more restricted the information, the more impenetrable the fortress surrounding the site. Chronicles and subsequent lore diverge in their specific metrics. Some accounts record extreme protocols executed to eliminate data transmission. Others propose more calculated erosion. What unifies these records is the recognition of a psychological reality. Information degrades during transit. Recollections warp. Coordinates lose definition. Even among loyal factions, memory shifts over time. A target clearly identified by one lineage becomes an unverified variable to the next. This degradation requires no catastrophic intervention to achieve efficacy. Routine human attrition suffices. Populations migrate. Bloodlines fracture. Communes confront new realities. High-value data fragments when its custodians fail to execute direct transmission. Across extended timelines, microlosses compound. A missing marker here, a warped orientation there, and eventually the baseline truth defies reconstruction. The vector from empirical certainty to absolute enigma is deceptive in its precision. The Mongolian landscape amplified this data decay. Interregional distances were immense. Comms required heavy time and resources. Intelligence circulated through networks of allegiance rather than centralized archives. In this decentralized theater, localized data remained highly specialized while broader awareness remained non-existent. If a burial sector was restricted to an elite vanguard, the expiration of generations systematically contracted that circle until the reliable data hit zero. The friction between memory and geography remains central to the narrative. A hidden gorge is strategically irrelevant unless an operative remembers which coordinate matters. A massif offers infinite slopes unless a specific ridge is identified and retained. The landscape provides variables, memory provides direction. Neutralize the direction, and the environment becomes impossible to interpret. What was once a verified objective reverts to one possibility among thousands. Across centuries, this mutation accelerated. Oral traditions preserve the macro fact of the interment while shedding the precise vector. Lore survived because the mystery retained political capital. Precise directions vanished because they were systematically purged, protected, or insulated from the public domain. Human memory functions simultaneously as a preserver and an eraser, broadcasting the legend while dissolving the data. The resulting equilibrium was absolute. Civilization remembered that a secret existed, yet lost the key required to unlock it. As generations elapsed, topography and human memory fused into an inseparable defensive matrix. A forgotten vector becomes impossible to track when vegetation mutates. A compromised landmark loses utility as the surrounding terrain evolves. Rivers alter their courses. Forests expand or recede. Trails exploited by one vanguard dissolve from regular use in the next. These microdevelopments evade immediate detection, yet across centuries they systematically transform regional geometry. The passage of time reshapes more than physical geography. It alters the parameters of inquiry. Custodians operating immediately post-burial prioritized structural secrecy. Subsequent lineages focused on the architecture of the myth itself. As strategic priorities shifted, tactical data decayed while legends gained geopolitical capital. A precise coordinate vanished, yet a memorable narrative endured. This mechanics explains why historical enigmas preserve dramatic lore while shedding concrete intelligence. The friction between survival and erasure defines the burial of Genghis Khan. The existence of the enigma remains a global constant. The macro-narrative continues to circulate. Historians analyze suspected sectors and dissect ancient texts. Yet, the exact coordinate defies verification. The overarching history survived while the terminal, most critical piece of intelligence slipped away from common knowledge. Environmental processes quietly engineered this outcome. A path exploited for a single deployment loses definition. Vegetation reclaims disturbed loam. Fallen leaves mask tracking lines within timber zones. Seasonal cycles repeat, depositing new strata across the landscape. What was visible to the initial vanguard becomes unidentifiable to the next lineage. Over extended timelines, routine ecological shifts execute results that mimic deliberate sabotage. This alliance between containment and time distinguishes the enigma from conventional historical puzzles. Empires frequently lose locations through archival destruction, urban collapse, or population displacement. Here, the erasure resulted from a synthesis of calculated secrecy and planetary transformation. Neither factor operated in isolation. Human command restricted the intelligence. The landscape absorbed the residual evidence. Together, they engineered a permanent data void. By this epoch, the burial site transcended its physical reality, mutating into a strategic absence. The empire acknowledged a monument of supreme gravity existed somewhere within the Mongolian interior, yet lacked the empirical data required to isolate it. The signatures had faded. The vectors had collapsed. Memories had fragmented. What remained was an equation suspended between history and myth. The land held its secret, while the generations above it continued to orbit the void. At the terminus of this systemic process, the burial coordinate bore no variance from the vast monotony of the Mongolian plateau. A traveler breaching the perimeter confronted only grass, timber, ridges, or gorges dictated by regional geography. Nothing broadcast that a geopolitical fracture point occurred there centuries prior. The mutation was not catastrophic. It materialized through the synchronized mechanics of tactical concealment, ecological transformation, and the calculated decay of human intelligence. Together, these forces re-engineered regional perception. The definitive signature of this outcome is its absolute finality. Conventional ancient sites endure because a physical trace survives. A fortification, a tumulus, an obelisk, or an archival document continuously routes reconnaissance toward a specific coordinate. The protocols governing Genghis Khan's interment utilized an inverse blueprint. The objective bypassed preservation through visibility, executing preservation through obscurity. Success mandated the degradation of data points rather than their creation. The terminal site was engineered to assimilate into the wild matrix. Over generations, the landscape assumed absolute guardianship of the secret. Forests choked lines of sight, ravines isolated the sector, weather systems eroded physical data. Seasonal cycles deployed continuous structural renewal. Human migration elsewhere carved new logistics vectors and settlements, diverting reconnaissance from ancestral coordinates. Each passing century deposited another layer of insulation between the present and the primary event. The burial site remained stationary while the surrounding world mutated, allowing the secret to fortify with age rather than decay. This architecture manifests a distinct philosophy of power. Rival sovereigns pursued immortality through visibility, leaving behind colossal infrastructure to compel ancestral memory. The traditions of the steppe dictate an alternate strategy. An emperor's influence commands civilization even when the coordinates of his corpse remain blank. The empire, the geopolitical shockwaves, and the psychological weight of the conqueror survived, while the burial chamber receded into a data void. Presence and absolute absence fused into a singular legacy. Today, investigative vanguards analyze clues, folklore, and topography in pursuit of a breakthrough. Modern reconnaissance deploys tools past generations could not conceptualize. Satellite arrays sweep remote terrain. Archaeologists scan microanomalies hidden beneath the topsoil. Historical codices undergo intense forensic scrutiny. Yet, despite these operations, the matrix remains unbroken. The defensive protocols executed centuries ago maintain complete dominance over the present. The architecture of erasure achieved total efficacy. Ultimately, the systematic liquidation of physical traces stands as one of the most successful intelligence operations in history. Whether individual legends achieve historical validation matters less than the tactical result. The burial coordinate was severed from human consciousness. The terrain reclaimed its natural configuration. Human memory preserved the existence of the secret while losing the key to its location. Somewhere within the Mongolian interior, the earth guards the asset. Above it, the landscape maintains its silence, betraying no sign of what lies buried beneath the bedrock. Every living soul who witnessed the final soil closing was systematically slaughtered. 10,000 horsemen trampled the earth to erase the grave, and then they themselves were executed by a silent garrison waiting in the dark. Was this clinical military security, or did they uncover something beneath the Mongolian earth that forced the empire to murder its own elites? The answer waits where the tracks disappear. The next and final episode is releasing in just 48 hours.